The Battle of Little Bighorn wasn't just Custer's last stand, it was Pretty Shield's living truth. Here's the story you weren't taught. Pretty Shield, a woman of exceptional strength and insight, was born around 1856. She married Goes Ahead, a steadfast Crow scout who served under the U.S. Army, including the renowned George Armstrong Custer. Notably, she was the niece of Half Yellow Face, a prominent Crow leader who commanded the scouts attached to Custer's 7th Cavalry Regiment. Renowned for her sharp intellect, deep wisdom, and steadfast bravery, Pretty Shield's understanding of her people's ways remains invaluable. Her first-hand recollections of the Battle of Little Bighorn, where her husband fought alongside Custer in 1876, stand as proof of her unyielding spirit. Through her stories and knowledge, she has left an indelible mark on history, a legacy that still fascinates scholars and writers today. But before we proceed, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Was not Goes Ahead with General Custer on that tragic day at Little Bighorn? I asked. Pretty Shield's face glowed with pride as she replied, "Yes, and in remembrance, the great chief in Washington sends me a paper each moon, which I trade for $30. Money I spend on my grandchildren, though I wouldn't refuse more." When I urged her to share her memories, she rose and walked to the door, looking toward the hill dotted with white stones marking where, on June 25, 1876, Custer and his brave 7th Cavalry fell. "Were the soldiers buried?" I asked, standing beside her. Her answer was hesitant. "I do not know, Sign Talker, but I remember the stench of death lingered all summer, driving us away. It was too much to bear." With a heavy sigh, she returned inside, murmuring, "War is a curse, for it always leaves empty spaces where loved ones once stood." Resuming her tale, she spoke evenly. "I was young when Son of the Morning Star, General Custer, fought our old enemies, the Lakota and Cheyenne, at Little Bighorn. Many of our warriors rode with the other one, General Terry, while over 150 more joined 3 Stars, General Crook, who was beaten by Crazy Horse at the Rosebud. Still others rode with Son of the Morning Star, and it is their story you asked me to tell. I will start at the beginning. We were camped above the mouth of Rotten Sundance Teepee, Clark Fork, when blue-coated soldiers came, asking our chief for help in finding wolf scouts. They had crossed the Elk River, Yellowstone, on a fireboat, arriving when the leaves were fresh and green. Our chief welcomed them with a feast, and the men held council. Though as a woman, I was not part of their talks. Still, 25 of our young men agreed to meet the soldiers at Tongue River's mouth. Half Yellowface, my uncle, led them. On their second night's camp, near what is now Forsyth, the Lakota stole every horse from our Crow scouts. Left on foot, our men had yet to learn the white man's ways of war. My husband Goes Ahead was among them. The memory seemed to amuse her. "Ah, the Lakota were clever horse thieves," she admitted. "Truly they could steal horses as skillfully as the Crow. We often had many Lakota ponies, sometimes hundreds." She laughed. Then refocusing, she went on. "Someone had to return to our village for fresh horses, for without them, the Crow Scouts could go no further. When the 2 messengers left to fetch horses, 12 more young warriors went with them to join the stranded group, still stranded on foot. Without an interpreter, the Crow Scouts depended on a mixed-blood Lakota to bridge the language gap when they reached the Blue Soldiers' camp near the Tongue River. Meanwhile, our village, a sprawling collection of teepees and ponies, moved to Long Drop. A Shoshone fighter arrived, urging more Crow warriors to join 3 Stars, General Crook, at Goose Creek, near what is now Sheridan, Wyoming. He insisted their united forces would crush the Lakota and Cheyenne. But instead, 3 Stars was defeated. The Crow and Shoshone warriors who fought beside him also met failure. I'm certain they fought fiercely, though the Blue Soldiers had chosen a poor battleground against Crazy Horse on the Rosebud. Over 100 of our young men, perhaps closer to 150, joined the Shoshone Scouts summoned by 3 Stars. Plenty Coups, a rising leader, carried their sacred pipe. Other respected figures like Flathead Woman, Medicine Crow, and Alligator Stands-Up rode with them. I can't describe the battle in detail, but I remember Bull Snake returning badly wounded and the many bluecoats left dead. We moved our village to Yellow Willows to stay clear of the fighting. With so few warriors remaining, the camp stayed quiet until the men came back. When they finally arrived, the village burst into life. The women rushed to their husbands and brothers, asking after their safety. Pretty Shield paused, her eyes bright with mischief. Leaning closer, she whispered, "Did the men ever tell you about the woman who fought with 3 stars on the Rosebud?" "No," I admitted, intrigued. Pretty Shield laughed softly. "Ah, they avoid speaking of it." She grinned slyly. "But I'll tell you, we Crow know this story well. I claim no man's words, only the truth. Yes, a Crow woman fought beside 3 stars at the Rosebud. In truth, one of them defied all labels, neither fully man nor woman. She dressed as a warrior but wore a woman's spirit. Her name was Finds Them and Kills Them." Pretty Shield's voice dipped low, her eyes gleaming. "She lacked a man's strength but held a woman's wisdom. The other, the wild magpie, was untamed, bound to no husband, bold, fearless, and beautiful as the night sky." Her gaze grew distant. "I know little of the Rosebud fight beyond what my husband Goes Ahead told me. When the warriors returned, their victory songs filled the air. I saw the 2 women, Finds Them and Kills and the wild magpie, riding and singing with the men. The first carried a rifle. The second waved a coup stick tipped with a single eagle feather. Both performed acts of courage. When Bull Snake fell wounded, Finds Them and Kills Them raced to shield him, firing at the Lakota without pause. The wild magpie circled them, her war cry piercing the chaos as she brandished her coup stick. When Lakota warriors charged for Bull Snake's scalp, her medicine was so powerful they turned back. Bull Snake lived, and every man saw it, yet they've never spoken a word. The return of the Crow Scouts and the 2 women to our village was a sight I'll always remember. Her excitement faded slightly. I was proud of their bravery, even the wild one. They cared for Bull Snake as they arrived. Ah, the celebration was fierce. We held a great scalp dance with 10 trophies, though the wild magpie gave hers to the men. Our village, once somber, now feasted and danced, drums pounding like heartbeats. Our spirits light as drifting feathers. The women who'd been uneasy with so many warriors gone now laughed where before we'd been silent. But my own man, Goes Ahead, was still away, riding with Son of the Morning Star and the other soldier chiefs to the Tongue River's mouth. I ached for his return. In those days, women always waited, hoping their men came back from war, whether against the Lakota, Pecuni, Arapaho, or Cheyenne. Yet even then, there was joy. Now, having told of our journeys, I reached the story you asked for, the fight on the Little Bighorn. When Son of the Morning Star left the Bluecoats' camp at Tongue River, he climbed the Rosebud. My husband Goes Ahead and 6 others, White Swan, Half Yellowface, Hairy Moccasin, White Man Runs Him, and Curly scouted for him. The land teemed with Lakota and Cheyenne, thick as flies on fresh buffalo meat. Our Crow Scouts saw the signs everywhere: tracks, cold campfires, half-eaten carcasses, proof the enemy had passed in haste. Such signs speak volumes. They reveal men moving swiftly toward some unknown destination. My husband Goes Ahead, along with White Man Runs Him and Hairy Moccasin, scouted ahead of Son of the Morning Star and his blue-coated cavalry. Half Yellowface, my uncle, who carried the sacred pipe, led them, while Curly rode close to Son of the Morning Star himself. Curly claimed sickness, and perhaps he truly was ill. The weight of what lay ahead might have made any man wish to rest. Maybe the future he saw was enough to sicken him. It would make anyone want to lie down a while. "Do you know where Busby is?" she asked suddenly. "Yes," I answered. "Well, Busby wasn't there in those days," she said with a dry laugh. The 3 Crow Scouts, riding ahead of Son of the Morning Star, found traces of a massive Lakota camp. Fires still warm, a few stray horses they took for themselves. This was the same village that had crushed 3 stars, though none yet knew Crazy Horse had already triumphed at the Rosebud. My husband Goes Ahead, along with Hairy Moccasin and White Man Runs Him, saw more Lakota and Cheyenne warriors ahead than bullets in the soldiers' belts. They thought it wise to warn Son of the Morning Star, so they rode back and told him. But he only said, "Go on ahead again," and took a drink from that straw-covered bottle on his saddle, as if their warning meant nothing. So Goes Ahead and the other 2 Crow Scouts obeyed. But when they reached the place where the enormous Lakota village had stood, they waited for Son of the Morning Star and his cavalry. They knew better than to go farther alone. The Lakota and Cheyenne outnumbered them beyond counting. When Son of the Morning Star arrived, he asked about a better place to camp, and Goes Ahead suggested the creek the white men called Thompson, with its cold, clear springs. The soldiers made camp there. Before sunrise the next day, the Crow Scouts rode out again. By midday they saw it, the biggest village any of them had ever laid eyes on, sprawled along the Little Bighorn. The valley was thick with lodges, and the hills were alive with Lakota and Cheyenne horses, more than anyone could number. Goes Ahead later admitted the sight filled him with dread. He, Hairy Moccasin, and White Man Runs Him retreated up the creek whites call Reno, where they met Son of the Morning Star riding down. Again they warned him. There were too many warriors, more than the soldiers could ever fight. Again he ignored them. But Son of the Morning Star, like a feather caught in the wind, was bound for his fate, blind to the danger. She pressed a fist to her forehead, shaking her head. He would not listen, she murmured, and he was brave. Yes, a brave man. Two Bodies, the half-breed interpreter, listened closely, she went on. He urged Son of the Morning Star, you can still turn back safely. But the soldier chief was fixed on battle, pulled toward death by some unseen hand. And so he led his men to die with him. Goes Ahead told me Son of the Morning Star drank too deeply from that straw-covered bottle. And when Two Bodies warned him, he made his fatal mistake, splitting his forces into three, sending two groups away from himself. Pretty Shield's voice grew sharper as she spoke. She stood, leaning over the table. That was when Goes Ahead readied himself for war, tying breath feathers into his hair. The little chief Reno rode off as ordered, taking the Lakota Scouts, White Swan, and Half Yellowface, who should not have followed. Curly, still claiming illness, fled. I know this is truth, she said firmly, because Goes Ahead saw it with his own eyes. Reno crossed the river, fired a few shots, then fell back. He knew how the fight would end. Any observer could have predicted the outcome. Goes Ahead rode beside Son of the Morning Star as they entered the Little Bighorn's swirling currents. He heard a Lakota warrior shout to Two Bodies, turn back or you'll die today. Yet Son of the Morning Star pressed forward, wading into the river with Two Bodies and the flag bearer. There, in those muddy waters, all three met their end. When their leader fell, the surviving soldiers scrambled up the bluffs in retreat. Goes Ahead, White Man Runs Him, and Hairy Moccasin recognized the hopelessness of their position and fled. Later my husband showed me the exact place where Son of the Morning Star fell. I could take you there myself. They escaped up a narrow creek that feeds into the Little Bighorn, just above where the general died. Their flight ended when they reached the Packers, who had formed a defensive ring with their supply train. As bullets whined through the air and mules collapsed around them, the men dug shallow pits, using the dead animals as additional cover. Goes Ahead always maintained they killed more Lakota and Cheyenne from that position than the soldiers did elsewhere. Her voice grew stronger as she continued, then suddenly softened. Ah, she exhaled deeply. My Goes Ahead admitted his fear that day, but he didn't run until he saw Son of the Morning Star fall into the river. He showed me everything, where the general died, where he began his escape, where he joined the Packers' last stand. Her fingers traced the table's edge. That monument the white men built? It's wrong. He died in the water. She spoke this last part softly, as if sharing a secret with Goes Ahead's spirit. Our interpreter, Goes Together, set aside her beadwork, visibly moved by the old woman's words. When Pretty Shield resumed, her tone surprised me. The gunfire and war cries stopped when the sun was sliding westward, she said matter-of-factly. White Man Runs Him urged the others to leave before the Lakota charged their position. The three Crow Scouts, now armed with soldiers' rifles, prepared to slip away. Their deception unfolded smoothly when the head packer questioned them. Where are you going? He asked. White Man Runs Him, ever quick-witted, replied they needed water. The packer handed them canteens, though every man who'd tried fetching water had been killed. The Crows never intended to fill them. Following Reno Creek upstream, they reached the pines where 4 Lakota Scouts, observers, not combatants, watched from a distance. One lagged behind on a gray horse, leading a sorrel mule. Goes ahead took his scalp and claimed the horse for white man runs him. The old gray mare, her back sore from years of use, became their shared mount after losing their own horses. I remember that worn-out Lakota pony well, Pretty Shield mused. The mule got away when his lead rope tangled, but that stubborn gray horse couldn't escape. This happened in early summer when leaves reached their fullness. When they reached the flooded Bighorn near present-day Hardin, rain fell steadily in the twilight. Stripped to their breechcloths for battle, they swam blindly, mistaking an island for the far shore. There they rested, cold and starving, their last meal eaten before the battle began. As they caught their breath, Goes Ahead spotted two figures on a distant ridge. Crows, he insisted, though the others feared they might be Lakota. The gray day stretched on, the river's roar masking all other sounds. With cautious signals, Goes Ahead called out across the muddy waters. The distant figures responded, not enemies but Crow Scouts. Their signed messages carried grim news. All the blue-coated cavalrymen lay dead. One scout, No Milk, who had crossed with Gibbon's infantry, waded through the current bearing precious gifts: salt pork, hardtack, and spare uniforms. His warning came like thunder. Walking soldiers approached slowly with their supply wagons. And worse, White Swan and Half Yellowface fell with Reno's doomed detachment. More Crow Scouts, having served with Terry and Gibbon's columns, now abandoned the infantry's slow advance. When they reached our village on Arrow Creek, fear ruled the day. In the twilight, our warriors, nerves frayed from constant vigilance, mistook them for Lakota raiders. Goes Ahead had to shoot two horses to stop the deadly misunderstanding before it began. Every shadow looked like a Lakota warrior then, Pretty Shield recalled, her hands trembling slightly. Our men jumped at their own breath. The warriors' homecoming should have brought joy, but the loss of Half Yellowface and White Swan left us hollow. The village erupted in grief. Women gashed their limbs. Men crooned death songs, all smeared in sacrificial blood. When my father prepared to mourn his brother, Half Yellowface, Goes Ahead stayed his knife. Wait 4 days. If he doesn't return, I'll cut my flesh with you. His eyes, milky with age yet sharp with memory, met mine. When I was young, I knew a Lakota fighter called Big Nose, who swore he'd personally killed Longhair Custer. Said the general died in the river next to that mixed-blood scout 2 bodies. The whites called him Mitch Boyer. He shared other fragments of memory, mostly trivial details that time had worn smooth. But one revelation stood out. We found 4 cavalry corpses 6 miles from the fighting. One was an officer. This accidental confirmation of Pretty Shield's story sent a shiver through me, though I'd never doubted her account. There's a particular power when different threads of oral history weave together to form the same truth. These voices from the past, Pretty Shield's measured recollections, the old warriors' corroborating details, even the Lakota enemy's boastful claims, all converge like tributaries into the great river of history. They offer us more than just facts about that fateful June day in 1876. They provide something far more valuable: the living perspective of those who were there, whose lives were forever changed by the clash of cultures on the Little Bighorn. May these first-hand accounts deepen your understanding of this pivotal moment in the Great Sioux War, not as dry history preserved in textbooks, but as human experience etched in memory and passed down through generations. For in the end, all great historical events are ultimately collections of personal stories. And these are some of the most profound we have from that turbulent time. History isn't just written by the victors. It's whispered by the survivors, carried on the wind, and waiting for those who will listen. Pretty Shield's story is one of courage, truth, and a battle that changed everything. But what do you think? Was Custer's last stand a tragic blunder or an inevitable clash of cultures? Drop your thoughts below. Let's keep history alive through debate. Want more untold stories? Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell.